Hello, Melanin Monarchy citizens. This is your Monarch Monique here coming to you with a review. Now, I promised you guys that I will go ahead and I would do a review of Andy Bell's 10 Crowns album. This album came out in 2025 this year, and he went on a whole world tour with this album, and they're wrapping it up tonight and tomorrow night in LA. But a couple of days ago, I was able to see this show here in San Diego. You guys go ahead and check out that review if you haven't seen it already. Nonetheless, that's okay because I'm pretty sure he's going to be doing something in 2026 because it looks like this tour was really a success. We're going to talk about the actual album today, the 10 Crowns album. Now, if you saw that review, the live show review on Melanin Monarchy, then you heard me say that I was also going to be talking about Vince Clarke's 2023 Songs of Silence. And I'm going to tell you why I'm going to be talking about both of these albums. So let's go ahead and let's get into this particular review. This is the first time that I've actually listened to a whole album, a brand new album by an artist, before actually going to see the show. I'll do it like sometimes, like a little bit of the album, not really the entire album, but I thought that for this particular legendary artist that it was worth it. It was worth go ahead and listening to the album before going into the show. And I think this is the first time that I've actually thought that the show was made the album a lot better. Not that the show just kind of enhanced the album, like having that live entertainment experience, but know that the show actually made the album better because when I went into the album and I listened to the album, I didn't really care for it. I mean, I thought I was listening to the songs and I'm thinking, it's a little flat, it's a little tasteless. It's not really my thing. It just kind of hit my ear and then just went out the other way. It just went in and went out the other way. And I guess when you're listening to an album, it's where you are in your life. It's the album is going to hit you where you are. And I guess where I am right now, it just wasn't doing that for me. There was a couple of songs that I thought was pretty cool, but a lot of people say that it's part of that disco era. It's electronic, maybe a little bit of gospel. I didn't feel definitely the disco. I heard a lot of that, but I just didn't feel like this was Andy's best. Like this is the best that he could have done. Now going to see the show, my God, the songs that he sung from the album popped. Everything, just seeing it live, just hearing him live, seeing his live version of the song, which really isn't that different than the album, made the album for me a lot better because after seeing that show, when I go back and I listen to the album, I'm listening to certain songs and I'm like, oh my gosh, these songs are actually pretty good songs. Now, Andy Bell is a lyricist. Andy Bell likes to write. He likes to write his music, and I really do like and appreciate Andy Bell's songs, his lyrics, his writing. But for this particular album, I noticed that there was a theme. There's a little bit of a theme, and I appreciate that. And we're going to get into that. But let's talk about the Erasure. So Andy Bell is one half of Erasure. The other half is Mr. Vince Clarke. Now, Erasure has not disbanded. They're still a band. They just decided to do solo work, which I think is healthy and I think is necessary in any type of musical relationship or maybe any type of relationship at all, that you see what you can do, what you can create on your own. Because when you have a band, especially a legacy band like Erasure, they've been around since 1984, 85-ish. And so they've been around for 40 years and you get pigeonholed into a particular sound. The fans think of it this way, the label think of it this way, the recording, everybody thinks of that particular band as having a particular sound. So you kind of get hemmed up in that sound. And so if you are an artist, you want to explore other sounds, especially if it's more than one, you're more than one part. There's different parts of you in a band. Everybody has their own unique version of what something is going to sound like. So I think it's healthy that you get off into your own and you start creating and you start seeing what's actually going to come out of you apart from your band partners, your band members, your record labels, your produce, all those types of things, and you just get with somebody completely new and see what you can produce. I'm all for it. I think it's great. I think it's a part of any creative, that every creative should be able to do that. So this was intentional though. Andy Bell went intentionally and wanted to do an album, and Vince Clarke did an album in 2023. Actually, it really wasn't intentional, so the story goes. And Vince Clarke is always creating. He's always in the studio, I believe, in New York City, or New York, Brooklyn, where he resides. And he was in the studio. This is during COVID time, and he was creating all of this work. And so it was actually Daniel Miller, the famous producer Daniel Miller, who kind of nudged Vince Clarke to put his compilation of music, some of the things that he had been creating during that 2020 COVID time, 2021 kind of COVID time, and to put it into an album. And so that album is called Songs of Silence. So that's the name of that album, Songs of Silence. And so Vince Clarke, it doesn't have singing in it, very little singing. It's more of a instrumental soundscape type of song. When I heard that back in 2023, I listened to Songs of Silence back in 2023. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was great. I thought, yes, it's definitely a departure to what Erasure would normally make. But, Vince Clarke has been involved. He's one of the founding members of Depeche Mode. Then he went on, after a year or two of doing Depeche Mode, went on to Yazoo. From Yazoo, he went ahead and went to Erasure. And so Vince Clarke has spent the past 50 years or so making music. And to hear this particular album, I thought it was a wonderful album. Now, let's talk about first of all, there were 10 songs on the 10 Crowns album, and then there are 10 songs on the Vince Clarke album. This is not a competition. I'm not talking about that they were competing or comparing. It looks like that they were actually very supportive of one another. They put their blessing on each one of their things, and they still work together, and they're very good friends. Actually, Vince Clarke was at the San Diego show. Didn't get a chance to talk to him and see him, but I did see him from the second floor. So they seem to be very, very supportive of one another's work, and I love that. That shows a lot of love. It shows the fans that Erasure maybe, may do something in the future. But we're going to talk about these separate works separately, but we're also kind of gonna combine it because there was a similar theme in these works. Now I'm going to put my glasses on because I have some notes, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up my notes. Just also to be clear, 10 Crowns was produced by David Ade. David, forgive me, darling, for mispronouncing, your last name. And again, like I said, wasn't one of the best things that I had heard until I heard it live. And I was like, man, I can only imagine how that studio was when Andy Bell was actually creating this. Again, I think that um, Andy Bell can do better, that the mixing could have been better. There are some different things that, I think maybe would have been done if he, went a different direction. But this is his creation. I'm not a musician. I'm the audience. I'm the fan. I'm just listening. But this is his creation, and we're going to allow artists to create. So let's talk about the themes of 10 Crowns. Now, first of all, 10 Crowns, the album title, immediately you think of British monetary units or a British monetary coin. Andy Bell for his logos for this particular album. The artwork, the art direction of artwork is a giant crown with Andy's face on it. Looks a little bit Romanesque. Not so much British, but Romanesque kind of coin, like a shekel or coin or things like that. That's what it kind of reminds me of. But 10 crowns can also mean from Revelation 13:1 about the crowns that was on the beast that was talked about in the Bible. It could also mean that. So that would be good for, I don't think that Andy Bell needs to explain anything. He needs to explain his lyrics, or he needs to explain the title. If he would like to, that's fine. This is just my interpretation. This is what I get of it, which brings me to the common theme that I think 10 Crowns has, and also Song of Silence, Vince Clarke's Song of Silence, well, actually Vincent Martin. But it was a lot of biblical imagery in this particular album in 10 Crowns, just like there's some, even though it's an instrumental, biblical imagery in in Vince Clarke's Songs of Silence. So let's talk about 10 Crowns just a little bit. Some of the major songs that have a lot of biblical imagery. Thank You, Dance for Mercy, Don't You Know, Dawn of Heaven's Gate, and one of my favorites off the 10 Crowns album is Godspell. I just think that that's a really wonderful and beautiful work that Andy Bell came up with and that he did. So, why is it important to talk about these imageries, these biblical imageries? And like a lot of people say, well, who cares? It's just music. Let's go ahead and let's listen to it. That's fine. You can do your own review. You can talk about that. This is my review. This is what I'm going to talk about. Uh, it's important, these imageries, and specifically biblical imageries in songs, is because for the same reason that Depeche Mode named their last album Memento Mori. It's because we have to remember that we all must die. There is going to come a time where we're no longer on this mortal coil, and we have to recognize that and realize that. And so I think that as you get older, wherever you are, whoever you are, as you get older, you think about your soul. You think about what is going to happen to my soul after I die, after this body fails me. Where is my soul going to go? Where am I going to go? And so these types of songs remind us of God and gives us a healthy fear of God and where our soul is going to land at the end. Now, you guys can listen to the album, the 10 Crowns album, and you can listen to the lyrics, and you can kind of come up with your own assumptions. I'm going to do that. I'm pretty sure in the years to come that the meaning is going to change. I don't think, again, like I said, I don't think that Andy Bell kind of wanted us to kind of think a certain way, especially when it comes to the Bible, especially when it comes to God, especially when it comes to, where our soul is going to go. I don't think that he had that type of aim to get us to thinking. I just think I was at a show once, and there was a gentleman, we were talking about music. And this is what this gentleman, paraphrasing basically what he said. He says, art, he said, music is art, and art comes from your soul. So whatever in your soul is what's going to come out into your art. So if your soul is dark, darkness is going to come out. If your soul is light, light is going to come out. Whatever is in your soul, that's what's going to come out in your art. And so music is part of that artistry. So what I am thinking about 10 Crowns and also about Songs of Silence about in Vincent Clarke is that they had heaven on their mind a lot, and that they were looking within their soul, that the music that they came up with was actually what was actually in their soul. And so I'm taking notice of that. I'm definitely taking notice of that. And so when you think about like I said, 10 Crowns, it's either the British monetary system, or it could refer to the beast, the blasphemous beast that John the Revelator talked about in Revelation 13, verse 1, or in that whole chapter in Revelation 13. But Song of Silence, that album title. There could be a number of reasons why Vince Clarke decided on that album title. If we're going with the whole biblical imagery narrative, then I would think that the Song of Silence comes from stillness with God. And you can see that in different Bible books like the book of Exodus, the book of Psalms, and more specifically Habakkuk 2, verse 20. And so I think that in the era of COVID, when everybody had to kind of shelter in place, and in the era of, especially being in New York, seeing a lot of disaster, but you know also feeling a lot of stillness in a city that is normally hustling, bustling, and there's people everywhere, and then just having silence. Just a city that for hundreds of years have been very noisy. The frequency, we've seen movies where I talk about the frequency, the sounds of New York City, and then having the city fall silent. And so I think that that's what I think of when I think of that album title, Songs of Silence, and Vince Clarke's 2023 album. And then also pairing it, not comparing, but pairing it with Andy Bell's 10 Crowns, and also talking about, you know, there's something coming. There's a beast that's coming, even if it's money, even if money is the beast and the crown. Or he could have also been talking about royalty, royal family. Could have been saying that. Not very sure. Or he just could have been saying, he himself is just royalty. He has crowns. Anything. But my interpretation is that definitely going with the biblical imagery of this. Now let's veer over and let's talk a little bit about Vince Clarke's album Song of Silence. Now one of the song that they released The single that they released off that album first was called Lamentations of Jeremiah. And I searched and I didn't see too many music journalists and articles written about this song or even about the title. It seemed to me that nobody really questioned Vince Clarke on why he named this particular song Lamentations of Jeremiah. And I think there's also a video of it. But let me just, it's one of my favorite songs, if not my most favorite song off that particular album. And let me just tell you a little bit about Jeremiah the prophet. Okay. Because in order to blatantly name a song, Lamentations of Jeremiah, you have to know a little bit about who this person Jeremiah was. Now, Jeremiah is a biblical figure. He was a prophet. He was a prophet at the end of the nation of Judah's demise. So Israel, David's kingdom split in two after Solomon. There's a nation of Israel, and then there's a kingdom of Israel, and then there's a kingdom of Judah. The kingdom of Israel had 10 tribes. The kingdom of Judah had Judah and Benjamin. That's it. Judah and Benjamin, okay, was in the kingdom of Judah, and they followed the prescribed worship of God. They followed, the Moses law, the Mosaic law, the Levitical priest. They followed all the prescriptions of the law. Where in the nation of Israel, the kingdom of Israel, they were doing their own thing. They had already been taken over by the Assyrians and things like that. So there was no more kingdom of Israel. So there was just a kingdom of Judah. And so this is coming. The last great king of Judah was Josiah. He was a wonderful king. He tore down a lot of the idolatrous things. He even went to Israel, the old kingdom of Israel, and tore down some idolatrous things. He tried to bring God back into the nation as a whole. He pretty much died he died in battle. I kind of think it was a terrible death. I have my own views and interpretations of why he died the way he died. But this is when Jeremiah is coming up. So he's coming up on the cuffs of this great king, this King Josiah, who was a reformer. He reformed Judah, and he's tried to go ahead and reform Israel and bring that back and bring these two nations back together under the kingdom of David. But God's judgment had been set. And now Jeremiah, as a prophet, had to witness the destruction of Jerusalem. And it was a horrific destruction. If you read the Bible and you hear and you see what happened to Israel at that time, it was pretty darn horrific. So much that Daniel says none has ever been done to Jerusalem as had been done, as God had allowed to happen to Jerusalem because of their idolatry and because they turned away from God. It was their fault. They were in idolatry. They turned away from God. So this is what they reaped. And so Jeremiah was essentially called the weeping prophet. And so he went about the city of Jerusalem weeping, lamenting. He was not only lamenting the death of the last godly king that Judah had, but he was lamenting the pending destruction of Judah, the pending destruction of Jerusalem. And but God had called him. God had called him as a young man, and he had no choice but to speak God's word. But in speaking God's word brought a lot of heartache to him because of what was coming. And so he had to witness Judah say, we don't care. We don't care what this prophet is saying. We're not going to listen to you. There's going to be peace. We're going to always be on top. And he said, no, this is what's going to happen. You guys need to be prepared for that. And he also had to witness the destruction when the Babylonians came. Nebuchadnezzar came and swept it. He just came, but this tells you that God doesn't do anything without warning. So for Vince Clarke to go ahead and name this particular song, which has a beautiful cello inside of it. Let's see if I put down in the notes who actually was the person to do that cello. It was just a beautiful rendition there, and I'll get that for you guys later. I'll probably put it up right here who that gentleman was that did that cello. And here it is. You have this lamentation, and it's a beautiful rendition of Vince Clarke's interpretation of what was going down in New York during that whole COVID thing. So again, with these two albums, I want to encourage you guys to listen to these albums, listen to them apart. They're not erasure. This is Andy Bell. This is Vince Clarke. They're doing their things separately. Andy Bell, Vince Clarke. Andy Bell, Vince Clarke. So when you're listening to 10 Crowns, you're listening to Andy Bell's work. And also his producer and the people that worked on that. And when you're listening to Songs of Silence, you're listening to their work. So if you're an Erasure fan and you're coming in thinking that you're going to get Erasure music, please don't be disappointed. Please allow your ears to go ahead and tune themselves to these two artists as separate artists and accept their separate artistry. But know that these things, deep biblical imagery. Now, what I would have liked to have happened, which can still happen for Vince Clarke, is that I would have liked for him to have gone on tour. I would have liked for him to take his Songs of Silence out on the road, have it at, have an orchestra, some string instruments, and no singing. He didn't need it. He doesn't need it. Go out on the road, do songs from Songs of Silence, do maybe some instrumental songs with the orchestra from his other album, Deep Tronica, do some Erasure songs, do some Depeche Mode songs. We would have eaten that up. We as fans of this type of music, it's not so shallow or we can't have you introduce something new. So I would love for Vince Clarke to do that for, what I would really love, you guys? It would be amazing if we just had Depeche Mode. We have Dave Gahan, Martin Gore, Andy Bell, Vince Clarke just show up and just do their solo work. Just a concert with those four guys. Hey, if R&B does it all the time, here you got New Edition, and you got Johnny Gill does his solo theme. Bobby Brown does his thing. You got Ralph Van does his thing, and Bev Bill DeVoe do their thing, and then they come together and then they sing. If they can do it, then these guys can do it, and I would love to see something like that. Even throw a little Alison Moyet in there, and then we're cha-cha. And then we got a party. So I would love to see that. I would love to see Andy Bell do, come together, do his single work. Then Vince Clarke do his single work. And then Dave Gahan, we love his albums, his solo albums, do his work. And then Martin Gore doing his work. And so we can even throw in a little Alan Wilder if we wanted to. I mean, it's endless. The possibilities are endless. And as with the biblical theme, with God, all things are possible. So that is my review. That is my critique of that. You guys let me know what you think of 10 Crowns. If you actually saw the show and you comparing it to the album, definitely put that in the comments. If you actually liked Songs of Silence, or you're just now listening to it because of this particular video, definitely go ahead and comment, tag those guys on it, and let them know how you feel about these particular songs. You guys, I'm excited about my wrap up that's coming up. I'm excited about what happened in 2025, all the great and legendary artists that I got to see. Andy Bell was magnifico, and I so appreciate him in all of his glory. He came out in his glam rock, and I love that. Andy Bell is an amazing front man. He danced, he talked, he just knew his crowd, and it looked like he just had a good time and like he wanted to be there. Like he loved his audience, he loved the music, and he loved being there. And that was felt when we saw him this past Wednesday night. And so we appreciate that. Okay, you guys, I will see you during the next review, and I hope you have a very, very Merry Christmas. All right, to the pit.